Alright, welcome back to Adobe Photoshop CC. In the previous tutorial we discussed the first part of the Bevel Emboss, which is to have an extrusion come out. The next one is to basically have a recess sort of extrusion that'll happen, so recess bevel. And I did want to point out that my fill is currently set to 30%, but you can adjust this. Again, drop it all the way to 0. I'm probably going to leave it around, I don't know, actually 30% look pretty good. So I'll probably leave it at that number. So now let's deal with the Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that layer, again in the gray part, not on the word, and bring up layer styles. And a lot of these settings are from the previous tutorial. So I'm probably going to keep a lot of it the same. So for example, I'll click on Bevel Emboss here. And right away we can see it, but we can see pure black letters. So let me go and click OK to apply that. But what I want to do is come in here and drop the fill, just like the other one. In fact, I'm going to drop this all the way to 0 for this one, and I'm going to double click again to bring up layer styles. This time click on the word Bevel Emboss, and this time instead of up we're going to choose down, and you'll see immediately that that gives us this recess sort of quality where the letters are being pushed back into the image here. Now you do have the same settings before. Global light is checked, so this will essentially have the same lighting as the Adobe. If we uncheck this, what would happen is we would be able to adjust the lighting specifically for this and make it different than this. I don't really want to do that. I want to have the same angle and so forth. So yeah, I may want to increase the overall shadow effect here and for the overlay, so increase that 100%. Otherwise, I kind of like the settings here. The next thing I'm going to do is actually add a color overlay, just like before. This time I'm going to pick that same color, but this time instead of color I'm going to choose multiply. So multiply will darken it and give this a little bit more of a shadow sort of quality, you know, as if it's being recessed in there. Pretty much same settings are fine. The next one I'm going to add instead of drop shadow is inner shadow. So the way this works, instead of the shadow being on the outside, the inner shadow will be on the inside of the shape of the text. So I'm going to click on the word inner shadow here. And again, I could adjust the settings here. Let's actually hit Control plus or Command plus a couple times to see, you know, just to get a little bit closer here and see how that would look. Double click on my styles effects again. Looks like it accidentally closed out. And click on the word inner shadow. So I think, let's see, like for example, the distance, I may want to increase that a little bit. The choke is essentially, I don't know if I need to adjust that much. Let's see. The size is what's really going to soften it, so I want a little bit softer. But I do want a little bit of a stronger shadow. So between the choke will give us a firmer sort of shadow, along with the size and the distance. You kind of vary these three together. That looks pretty good there. I like the contour. I don't have to adjust this. Anti-aliasing, you're really not going to notice much difference. It's very subtle. I forgot to mention that in the last tutorial. But under Bevel Emboss, same thing here with the anti-aliasing. You really can't tell much of a difference with this kind of resolution. So pretty much click OK, and I pretty much like that effect. I mean, this looks really good. So the next thing to make this really stand out and work well as an image is to perhaps create a vignette effect. So I'm going to add a new layer above this layer, and above all my layers in fact, and switch to the paint bucket tool as a hotkey of G. If you have other tools selected, for example if you have gradient tool, you can mouse down, hold the mouse down on the tool and go down to paint bucket, and I want my default black and white and basically click in here. So what I have done essentially is paint out the whole area here, and what I'm going to do is switch to eraser tool. And I've already done this in the past, but if I right click, choose a soft brush, basically is what I want, and then increase the size quite a bit, just my bracket keys, right bracket a couple times till I get really big here. And I have the opacity set at 20%, and you can see up here at the top for my previous settings. If you have 0 for 100%, all you can do is hit the 2 key and you get 20%. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to center it pretty much and then click and click again. And what I'm going to do is just reduce the size a couple of times and kind of click, 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 and basically keep doing that until I get this kind of sort of vignetting effect here. Now you can go really crazy with it. You can have a lot of transition. I think that looks pretty good. You can also drop the opacity of this layer so it doesn't have to be quite so strong if you don't want it to be. You can also burn it in by switching to multiply, just burn in a little bit better in terms of the transition. Now, another thing I might want to do is add another layer and apply some sort of glowing effect. So maybe a little bit of shine here. So if I hit the X key, bring white as a foreground color, or actually, let's hit P for brush. I had the eraser tool selected. And now white is my foreground color. And make my brush kind of big here and make sure it is the soft brush, which it is by right clicking. And basically click in here wherever I want the light to kind of shine a little bit more. I have linear dodge add selected here, so as I click it's going to add a little bit more, sort of glow effect, a little more bloom sort of effect. And I don't know, I can kind of do that in a couple areas here, and then change this blend mode from normal to screen or linear dodge add if I want to, and then I can drop the overall opacity, just give it a little bit extra kind of light sort of shining up from above there. Sometimes what I'll do now is I'll actually create a merge as big a copy of the image. So the hotkey is, and I'm going to select top layer here, is Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E on a Mac, and that gives me a merge as big a copy of this layer, this whole image. And then I'll right click and duplicate the layer one more time and click OK. This way, if I take it too far, I can always drop the opacity of this layer. But I like to switch then to color dodge and blend mode and pick sort of a nice color in here by holding on Alt or Option, a little bit of gray, and maybe giving a little bit extra shine on a couple of these edges here, just a little bit extra glow. And then I can do it on these recessed areas too. And you can definitely take this too far, so be aware of that. But I think having a little bit of it can be kind of cool. The other thing you can do is after you add a little bit of that, you can add a little bit of shadow by switching to the opposite blend mode, which is color burn. Again, I'm going to hold Alt or Option, pick a sort of gray in here. Again, my opacity is really low. It was 20% for the color dodge. Now I'm going to go back to 10% by hitting the 1 key for the color burn. And I may even go in here and just burn in some of these, sort of shadow areas of the type a little bit, just to darken it up, maybe get around the edges a little bit more. I mean, it's totally preferential at this point. How far do you want to take this? You can definitely also add like a levels adjustment, and exaggerate the highlights and the darks even a little bit more if you want. But at this point, if you take it too far, you can always drop down that layer and get the layer underneath, and you can see before and after here. So I kind of like this effect. I think this is looking really good. If I go ahead and frame my whole scene here by hitting the F key twice, and then hitting Control R or Command R on the Mac to get rid of my rulers, and then hit Control 0 or Command 0, we can maximize our scene here. So that's the end of this tutorial exploring the Bevel Emboss. I hope you enjoyed this second half of the tutorial on how to create extruded sort of shapes, which is the Adobe text there, and then recessed text, which is the Photoshop. Until next time, see you soon in Adobe Photoshop CC.